This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any suggestions for games you'd like me to look at here on the channel, please let me know. Alright everybody, welcome to this week's Dissecting Design here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel. For this one we are going way back into the past here with the original Starcraft. Blizzard recently made the original and the expansion free for anyone to download in preparation for an HD update coming later in 2017. But we can certainly look at the original here tonight. The original Starcraft was released in 1998 and was very much a major part of Blizzard's growth during that decade and really set the stage for the World Cyber Games and the esports side of strategy game design. And I am certainly not an esports player, so unfortunately you won't be seeing high-level Starcraft play here. But we will be talking about the design and the unique things Blizzard did with Starcraft that was kind of an evolution of the Warcraft design. So, to begin with, we have the two parts of it, Starcraft and Brood War. We come over here. We of course have the three campaigns of Terran, Zerg, and Protoss. And it's important to understand just how unique this simple aspect of Starcraft was. The idea of asymmetrical strategy game design is the concept of having completely different factions for the player to use. It's not just I have tanks, you have tanks. It's, in this case, I have a siege tank, you have an entire army of zerglings coming to kill me. And asymmetrical balance is very hard to do properly, because again, you're not dealing with straight one-to-one elements. Anyone who's played Starcraft, either the original or Starcraft 2, will tell you that each faction plays vastly different. And one important point is that Starcraft wasn't the first game, or even Warcraft, to do this. Command & Conquer was probably one of the earliest RTSs to feature that kind of faction design with the GDI and Brotherhood of Nod. But Starcraft really took things ahead in terms of its development. Each faction has its own unique UI, and as we've said, unique units, tech, and things to make them stand out. And we're going to hopefully try and show things, each one of them off in this video. So let's get into the game, and we'll start with the Terran first. Alright, here we are in game with a scene that I am sure everyone who's watching this right now has probably seen at some point in their life. This is the classic piece of Starcraft. And you'll be hearing not enough minerals and mine Vespane gas, who knows how long. Now, as a real-time strategy game, the rules are simple on that front. We collect resources to build more stuff to get units, and then we hopefully try and take over. And with Starcraft itself, you can see at the bottom the use of hotkeys with the letter that is yellow. Now, the cost for everything is a very big deal in terms of organizing how things are balanced. One thing that you'll notice when we get to the other factions is each building cost, in terms of its representative in the other factions, costs usually around the same amount of resources. Protoss usually costs more because they are fancier. We have two resources, and I just picked a random map as well. Don't know who the AI is, and again, I am not an esports Starcraft player. I cannot handle this game at that kind of pace. But as we go forward, we look over here, you can see the damage and the armor, character's health. Trying to just scout out the enemy base. There we go. Oh, so he is definitely going for something there. I went for refinery. Let's see. Trying to piss him off. No. No. Aw. So he is certainly getting going there. Now, with this being the original Starcraft, obviously it doesn't have as many of the quality of life features that are added to the latest one, such as knowing how many SCVs or resource gatherers to have at one time. Let's get this going here. And you notice this map is designed around symmetry. This is kind of a hallmark of a lot of the maps of StarCraft, to deliver both sides to have basically the same kind of terrain and go from there. Although there are plenty of advanced maps, usually like 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s, that mix things up. And again, watching StarCraft, especially when we're not talking about things from an esports side, could be a little bit boring. But it is kind of interesting as we're building this up about the contribution StarCraft did to esports and really creating that scene. But we will save that for a later part. Now, another major part, or another element of this game's design, is of course managing your unit population up there. Come on, guy, what are you doing? And as with any real-time strategy game, there are different styles of play, from rushing, turtling, and just simply going for a massive economy and hoping to overwhelm with superior units. So right now, I know that if they're coming, they're going to be, they have to come through this part. So some rally points. Now, one thing I can tell you is that I am not using the keyboard, and that is another major part of advanced play. Let's get this going right there. And we won't be playing a full match of StarCraft multiplayer or single player here, because that could be a good 20 to 30 minutes simply per faction. I'm trying to show off some of the basic parts. Now, one thing the game does, of course, have are control groups. There we go. Attack, move. Let's get these guys in there. And the idea, of course, is we are building in terms of tiers. We want to make our guys better. We build the engineering bay, and then the academy. This unlocks new units, and it's just a very effective progression curve. You also have to remember to keep assigning these guys. Man, she's going to be saying mine more minerals for a very long time. Now, when we show off the Zerg and the Protoss in the next few minutes, you'll see how the basic foundation of each faction is the same, but what we can build and what we can do is vastly different. A few weeks ago, we did a Dissecting Design on Rise of Nations, and I thought that that one handled the UI in terms of being able to properly see what's going on a lot easier. Let's see. There didn't seem to be any hotkeys to select buildings, or to immediately select a building, which was one of the things I really liked about Rise of Nations, but then again, that was developed a few years down the road. Alright, so we can unlock new abilities, and the famous stim packs of Marines. Anyone who's watched a professional play of Terran versus Terran or Terran versus anyone knows how effective they can be. So we'll send this guy out into the world and see what we can find. Now at this point we probably should be getting a second base. But to do that, we need to find where the resources are. Oh. Whoa. They are coming. Set that as a rally point. Oh, we're so dead. Like I said, I am not a professional player of Starcraft, and it has been a very, very long time. But with my failure here, let's switch over to the Zerg and see how things go differently, hopefully. Alright, we are back with another map, and this time as the Zerg. The Zerg, of course, famous for the now infamous phrase, there we go, of the Zerg rush. Now the idea of the Zerg is that we construct from our hatchery here. Now again, notice the costs of how much things are worth, or how much it's going to cost to produce these things. The Overlord is 100 minerals, just as the supply depot is for the Terran. And this was explicit. One of the ways that Blizzard tried to use asymmetrical balance was to keep things relatively in check. Now when you build the spawning pool, which is 200, which is about the same cost of the barracks. Let's see what we can do here. Sending this guy out so we can kind of spot what's going on. But this time we'll try and get some units going, which is very important as the Zerg, because we are not about quality. And that's kind of one of the foundations of Starcraft, is the differences between the various factions. The Terran are kind of your middle of the road. Zergs are about just raw numbers, just overwhelmed with everything you got, and then the Protoss are the quality over quantity. They're always going to be more expensive, but they're going to last longer. So while that's getting along, we can of course add more abilities. Probably need to build another Overlord soon. Our little guy here is very slow. Come on. Let's get all that lovely minerals going. Yeah, mine more minerals, we know. And when we come to the Protoss side, we'll talk more about the esports. But for this one, let's stay with the design of the game. We have a very basic UI, but it does the job. Again, everything we need to know is going to be in the middle here. Features and abilities along the right, and then the map on the left. And then we have the usual aesthetics that are unique to each faction. You'll see the Protoss one up next. So let me select some guys. Now, another interesting thing about the asymmetrical balance is that Zerglings cost 50, and the Terran Marines will cost 100. And the reason is that one group of Zerglings, or one spawn of Zerglings, is usually not enough to deal with a Marine. It will usually take two. Oh, there they are right there. It will usually take two Zerglings to deal with one Marine. And this is the point, is to hammer home the fact that the Zerglings are just massively weaker compared to their Marine brethren. Definitely need to get that. We need more eggs too. We are limited by how much we can produce simply by the eggs, while with the other factions we can just go as crazy as we want. Let's get that. If we want Hydralisk, we're going to need that stuff. And of course we can send a Zergling out to see what's going on. And I forgot to mention, of course, the creep. Unique to the Zerglings, or to the Zerg, it's how we can produce our buildings, and will kind of give us vision as it begins to spread. This is a major part of Starcraft 2 play, allowing us to just coat the map in creep. Our Zerglings are still going along. You can also see on this map how important air units are for just quickly traversing it. When it comes to Zerglings, you never have enough of them. Spawn more overlords, we know. Wonder when we'll see our enemies. So if I wanted to, we could go out into the middle here and try and take over another group, which I think we will attempt to do this time. The overlords are starting to come. We'll get a lair going. And the different upgrades for your buildings, this is all designed around the tier system of how things are unlocked. Each faction has something that basically will open up the next tier. That. So this time I'm being a little bit more aggressive. And because the lairs are the only places where or whatever the hatchery or whatever that primary building of the Zerg is where the units come from, it makes it a lot different in terms of unit construction. Because the more of these you have, the more you can produce at any given time. Oh, come on, I told you guys to click over here. Oh, here they come. Come on, hurry up. Probably should have got the adrenal boost. Let's see if we can bait him into attacking the lair. Of course, now it's going, right? Oh no. They're spread out. And again, I am not a professional player here, so I'm sure they will have known how to counter this very easily. Hydralisk Den. Keep spreading our creep out. The upgrade should be getting done. What the hell are you doing? There you go. Now they're a lot faster. Don't kill my overlords. No. What are you guys doing? Of course, zerg units will heal over time. Good. Well, I survived the rush, at least. Of course, when you get out, another famous unit, the Hydralisks. You can see the creep starting to spread out as well. Another major part of zerg play, some is just building multiple hatcheries next to each other just to get more eggs and larvae going. Yay, our first Hydralisk is done. Evolution chamber. We should be able to build an advanced one. Yes, the spire. What I probably should be doing is getting more creep colonies going. Oh good, fire bats. The AI in Starcraft does not pull any punches either. Probably should have built a second hatchery too. But again, you can see how the different factions are operating. Can we get another creep colony built in time? Probably not. Those are the anti-building ones. I think we're screwed here, but we'll move on to the Protoss. Let's see. Come on, guys, what are you doing? And one thing about Starcraft is that there is definitely a rock, paper, scissors to a lot of the units and how they will counter each other. But the game doesn't really explicitly tell you this. Not in the same way that we see in Age of Empires, with spearmen count cavalry, cavalry count archers, archers count spearmen. But, again, if we sit here and just play Starcraft all day, we'll be here till the cows come home. So we'll move on and talk a little bit about the Protoss side, and that's where we'll discuss kind of Starcraft's legacy in the esports territory. So I'll see you all in a second. Alright, we are now the Protoss, who are our quality over quantity. Again, notice that the probes cost as much as the SCVs, which cost as much as the drones. A major part of the asymmetrical balance, again, of Starcraft is the fact that everything has comparative costs. So when we get to a pylon, you can see it costs 100. The gateway costs 150, in line with the barracks. The only difference, of course, is going to be when we get these zealots out and how much they will cost us. But while we're waiting for that to happen, let's talk about the other aspect of StarCraft and what has helped keep it in popularity to this day, and that's esports. StarCraft also unveiled or came with the Battle.net or Battle.net. This was Blizzard's proprietary matchmaking and multiplayer system. A now famous name which was recently retired, Battle.net allowed you to organize games with each other, have friends, and just basically handled a lot of the matchmaking and multiplayer side of things. Usually, at least back in the old days, most developers relied on a third-party program or company for it. Most famously would be something like GameSpy. But with Battle.net, this basically let Blizzard control and manage everything from their own company. And it certainly helped things out. Battle.net becoming a major part of Starcraft 2, Diablo series, and so on. And once this is done, I can then build the barracks. And Starcraft's micro-focus, with commanding smaller army sizes, and again, the use of these special abilities that we usually see over here, lent itself really well to the esports scene. And as anyone who's played PC games will tell you, that StarCraft became a major sensation in Korea. To the point where it's basically like a national sport there. People who have become good enough at StarCraft to become esports players have become celebrities in their own right there. A strange sight, at least for us in the United States. But with the rise of esports, at least for the last few years here, it will be interesting to see if the United States will follow suit as more esports and competitive gaming becomes popular. But when it comes to StarCraft, this has still been considered the popular or the de facto example of the esports side. And if you notice, again, with the costs, Zealots cost 2 units of population cap, while the other ones only cost 1, to signify just how much more capable they are, how much higher their stats. Of course, anyone will tell you, in order to play with the Protoss, we need to just keep building pylons. So I will send this guy out, see if we can do some sniping. Come on, build faster. And we of course need to mine more Vespene. Usually, because the maps are symmetrical, the enemy will probably be over here. Come on. Find your way around, buddy. And again, when time comes, we just want to quickly build another Nexus. And I'm sure the enemy is massing a rush at the moment. And another part about this is, of course, the clicks per minute, or CPM. I am very, very, very slow in this regard. If this was a professional play, you would be hearing the keyboard just being mashed for the last 30 minutes or how long we've been playing. It would also help if I actually knew what these maps were. It doesn't look like there's anything over there. Come on, guys. And just one important part of StarCraft is just always doing something. You never just want to be sitting around waiting for something to happen. You should be building, getting units going, and the like. StarCraft 2, you could basically just summon units wherever you had pylon coverage, which lent itself really, really well to rushing. And boy, did I get hit by that when I was playing StarCraft 2. These guys in there. Now, getting back to the esports side, StarCraft's it's kind of interesting about StarCraft versus StarCraft 2 in the competitive scene. Again, I don't have the esports background to tell you one way or the other, but it kind of felt that StarCraft 1 was considered more popular when it came to esports side of things. But for those of you watching this who are either professional players on StarCraft 1 or 2, what do you think about the differences between the two? We'll get that going there. Again, I think from a macro level style, I think I prefer like Rise of Nations, just because it felt easier for me to control. But when it came to StarCraft, this game was definitely focused about the esports side. They wanted players to have to micromanage. They wanted high CPM to matter, because this is what lent itself well to the esports side and having that skill ceiling. And one of these days, we'll need to have a greater discussion about the esports influence on game design, which is a little bit too much to go into for today. I wonder if this is a map that I do need air in order to even get around. Kind of feels like it. Where are my cannons? Ah, we need a forge. I'm also used to in StarCraft 2 to actually tell you how many probes you need at any given time. That's going along. So it looks like we won't be able to do much until we get air, which is where the Stargate comes in. Our building's on. I'm also playing this on mute so I'm not distracted by the sound, which is also probably not helping my play at all. Get some upgrades. Once again, the idea behind the Protoss is that everything costs a lot more, but our units are going to be stronger and harder to kill because of it. Ah. Uh-oh. And the AI really likes to rush in this game. And not remembering what the build orders are didn't help out my case either. Well, this is great. We have 3 plays of me losing. And that's kind of an interesting point about StarCraft, that we'll get back to the main menu and talk about once these guys are finished ripping up my simulator here. But we'll do that now. Anyway, I'll see you all in a second. When it comes to StarCraft, in terms of its design and its popularity, it really has created a divide between its single-player and its multiplayer side. On one half of the game, you have an extensive story, which for its day was still quite unique, going for more of a serious tone compared to Command & Conquer's, crazy ant levels and Stalin taking over with Tesla tanks. But on the other side of it, you have the multiplayer, the professional esports scene of build orders, high CPM, and people moving their hands faster than I could ever do. And one of the kind of failings that Blizzard has had with the StarCraft series has been trying to coalesce these two sides. In the original StarCraft, what we're showing here, basically what you do in single player is vastly, vastly different from what you do in multiplayer. Single player missions, of course, have unique considerations and situations that you wouldn't be able to do in the multiplayer side. Of course, the famous campaign scene here. And while the campaigns gave you the basic foundation for what it took to play StarCraft, it did not prepare you at all for multiplayer. There's no real lessons about build orders, about understanding the high speed side of StarCraft. And when you combine this with the lack of hotkeys and the lack of macro level controls, and when I mean macro level, I'm talking about the abilities to easily control multiple parts of your base without having to click. For instance, in Rise of Nations, I can hit a hotkey and pull up any one of my unit producing structures anywhere on the map. I can research things immediately. I don't have to jump back to the base to do it. But in StarCraft, a lot of the high level play is about the micro. Quickly being able to command your units to do something. Quickly selecting that one unit in your army to use his special ability and then hotkeying or control grouping over to someone else. The problem with StarCraft, again, is that so much of the high level play is due to the lack of quality of life features. And this presents pretty much a barrier when it comes to making that transition from single to multiplayer. You can be really good at StarCraft single player campaign and completely nosedive when it comes to the multiplayer. And as you've seen over the last 3 parts of me failing with Terran, Zerg, and Protoss in that lovely order, again, even if you know what's going on, if you don't have the finger dexterity and the multiplayer knowledge to do it, you are just going to get killed every single time. And if you were watching a professional esports player go against the AI, I am sure they would have utterly destroyed it. They would have moved a lot faster. When it came to StarCraft 2, one of the more interesting things that Blizzard did was further that divide between single and multiplayer. Essentially, they gave up. They realized that someone who's going to play StarCraft 2 professionally probably doesn't care about the campaign, and vice versa. So on the campaign side, you had unique units that were only available in the single player. You had specialized missions, and then of course the multiplayer had greater expansion of the esports side with the LO rankings and challenges on that front. And it's kind of I think a band-aid fix. I kind of wish that Blizzard would have made the multiplayer more accommodating for newer players, because I think it would have done more to help out the scene. And this is kind of an issue that I think a lot of Blizzard's games have, in terms of that wide disparity between the casual, the core, and the esports side. For instance, in Overwatch, as we've seen, it is a very big challenge rising up to becoming an expert player. Not helped by, matchmaking or LO hell, and the fact that the game doesn't really offer that much guidance for pushing players up the various skill levels. And again, the same goes for StarCraft. You have specific unit counters that the game makes no attempt at explaining. It doesn't, despite the importance of build orders and having a general strategy, the game makes no reference to this. And a lot of what drives the esports side basically comes from the esports, and Blizzard makes no attempt to mention it. Now, over the years, StarCraft 2 has walked back a little bit on this regard, with providing information such as the number of drones or number of resource gatherers that can be in any given time, and making it easier to use control groups and whatnot. But it's kind of interesting about how much there's that divide between the esports and the core or casual play. And for those of you who do play or watch professional StarCraft, what do you think about adding more quality of life features to the game's UI and general play to make it easier for someone to get into the game? Again, many esports players will scoff at that because they don't want any advantages on that front. They want everything to be as much about the skill of playing the game rather than about the game helping out. And like I said, there is a whole bunch of topics waiting to be discussed on that front. But we'll jump back in, I think, one more time, and you can watch me fail as we'll look at the Brood War side for, I think, our final part. Alright, we're back in. Another major part of Starcraft's success and long-term viability has certainly been the expansion. And Blizzard's expansions have always been a very big part of their success. They generally add both supplemental content in the form of things to enhance it, as well as just generally adding to the length of play. And Brood War was certainly no exception. Not only did it add, as you saw, 3 new campaigns, but it also added a variety of units to the game. And once again, keeping with the asymmetrical side of things, you have vastly different units for each one of the 3 factions. And of course, the building-wise, things kept relatively the same, but we saw new technology and new ways of using the various factions there. And it's kind of interesting that we never saw Blizzard go further with the expansions, especially considering StarCraft's legacy, which is still being played to this day. Now let's see if we can actually do things any better. I'm not holding out much hope for that part. I should be able to produce the barracks any second now. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall for their design meetings in terms of how they build out StarCraft and figuring out just how they want each faction to be. And that, again, is the challenge of asymmetrical design, why not a lot of designers will do it. Because you're essentially having to build 2 or more completely different aspects of your game, and then figure out how to make them all work together without keeping one being more powerful than the others. As you can see here, I'm going to bet our enemy is going to be right there. And again, when it comes to that esports side of things, there is a lot in terms of knowing just when to build stuff, what to build in what order, how things go and such. So it is looking like we're going to be dealing with a zealot rush here, so that's always great. Oh no, they're coming for me. No. Jeez. I think we may have tricked up the AI there. It probably shouldn't have been chasing after me this whole time. I think we may have a huge advantage simply by default here. There we go, now they know not to head on back. Not sure what that was all about. But again, we should be building up as quickly as we can. Which again, it's hard for anyone who can, like, this is why for a lot of people who play or do casting of StarCraft, they will use recorded games. So they're not actually talking and playing at the same time, because it is certainly not easy to do. Alright, we found another base there. So let's see if we can set something up. Come on, you. Ah, yes, they're always fun trying to figure out where to place these damn things down. And again, just always keep building SUVs. Or SCVs. Sorry about that. Need more Vespene gas, of course. There we go. Remember, the idea of the Protoss is they will always be more powerful than our Terran brethren. At least until we can try and match them with the adrenal burst, or the adrenaline rush. Come on, get it built quick. Again, just keep building. And of course using the barracks push, or I'm sorry, the bunker push strategy. Of course, if I was paying more attention, I would have already started construction of another supply depot. We can also lift that up. And again, the idea, of course, these guys are just neutral, we don't care about them. And of course, the medic. One of the most popular and just migraine-inducing units to play against, as they can heal the anti-infantry units. Can I build a command center yet? Should be getting done. Again, if I was playing this more professionally, we would be speeding along in terms of getting units going. Trying to get that. And there's just a whole microcosm of different build orders and strategies for playing Starcraft. And like I said, I don't know any of them. But I think we are doing at least a little bit better than what we were doing last time. At least until they rush me. Then we're in trouble. Probably need more Vespene gas. And another example of that is just the importance of getting the 1-1 upgrade. And that is another advanced part of the game in terms of just how much of a difference doing that little extra bit of damage can mean for surviving. But I will leave that to professional esports players to explain that one. Of course, the stim pack. Some medics going. And at this point, I probably should be getting a factory. We can also build another barracks. I am surprised they have not tried to attack us yet. That's going along. But another question for you folks watching this right now. Again, when it came to the differences between StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, the basic foundation of the two games is similar, or very similar I should say, but they did add more unique abilities and more micro elements. Each command center for the various factions, oh, here we go. Jeez. And the rush gets me again. But, like I was saying, each faction gets a special ability. The Protoss allowed you to, I think, summon and place units down. The Terran lets you either get the resource, or I'm sorry, get the scan, or summon an enhanced SCV that just strictly does resource gathering. And the Zerg lets you basically, like, shoot out more drones via the Queen. So what did you think of those additional micro elements to the game? And again, we're not going to be sitting here playing StarCraft because it's almost impossible to discuss this game and play it at the same time. But we'll head back to the menu, I think, for one final part. To wrap up our talk on StarCraft, we definitely need to at least mention the campaign editor, another major part of StarCraft's success, especially in the modding community. StarCraft was one of the first games to have a built-in editor that allowed players to flex their creative muscle and design their own maps, be it for 1v1, 2v2, or anything like that. This would be expanded with later games, especially Warcraft 3, and how it actually provided players with the tools to essentially create their own designs. And Warcraft 3 is famously what gave us tower defense and Defense of the Ancients, or Dota, as a form of mods. But giving players the ability to create their own maps, and then taking that online and such, provide another way of building the community and keeping StarCraft in the professional and general or core eye for years to come. For me, like I said, it's a little too fast-paced for me, and if you watch my Dissecting Design of Rise of Nations, I found that to be a lot better of a game, at least for easing players into it and the quality of life features. But StarCraft on the professional scene cannot be understated, and the sheer popularity and just the high skill level it takes to play at that point definitely deserves praise. But I think it also ran to that challenge of how exciting is it to watch a professional StarCraft play. There's so much going on with it that it really took a lot of years for the scene to evolve to bring in more of a casual audience. And even with that said, I'm just kind of curious, for those of you who do follow StarCraft, how big is it in terms of the casual market watching it? Is in the same vein as what we're seeing with people watching Dota, or Counter-Strike, or even fighting games. One of the problems that StarCraft had, and it actually kind of introduced to the real-time strategy side, was trying to become esports or consumer friendly, making it easier for people to watch and digest. This will become a major part of Command & Conquer strategy over the thousands, and more micro-style RTS games like Company of Hero, Warhammer 40k, and so on. For people like me who prefer the macro side, sadly we would be pushed to the wayside. And StarCraft's design would be seen as more of the popular example, again, for that esports craze and the esports money that goes with it. But when it comes to talking about the importance of StarCraft, it is still a very massive game in terms of the PC market and game design. Blizzard's ability to balance factions asymmetrically is a major part of understanding game development, and being able to build a set foundation in terms of resource costs and unit abilities help to make that work. And like I said in previous talks, Blizzard is one of the most analytical companies in the industry. They will balance stuff down to the decimal points to make sure that things are working within their set constraints. And if we had the time, we could easily spend an hour or two just like breaking down each faction. But sadly, that's not a quick dissection. That's just like a full-on autopsy. But maybe we'll do that at some point in another video. But for designers and enthusiasts watching this, again, when it came to Starcraft's game design and the asymmetrical balance, this is a really good example of a game to pick apart and examine, and how Blizzard was able to take these different elements and make them work. Again, the different factions or the different sides have abilities that the other ones just don't have. And again, that is very hard to balance. The zergs don't get an adrenaline surge like the Terrans, while the Protoss have their Templars and their Sonic Storms, which is unique to them. If this was a lesser strategy game, each faction probably would have gotten comparable units. The Zergs would have gotten a medic unit like the Terrans did. Terrans would have gotten Dragoons and the like. But Blizzard didn't do that. And again, the amount of careful balance that's put into StarCraft, and of course by extension StarCraft 2, definitely deserves praise. And definitely is a worthy subject to study if you're interested in learning more about game design, especially from a masterclass like this. Well, with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's Dissecting Design. Again, I'm sorry that I am not a esports player. There's only so many things I can do when it comes to making these videos, and being able to talk and play at an esports level is beyond my capacity. My voice is starting to die on me as well, so I think this is a good time to end. So if you enjoyed things, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you would like to pitch a future Dissecting Design, let me know in the comments below. For those of you who are either professional players or follow the professional scene, I am still very curious about what you think in terms of StarCraft, in terms of appealing to different consumer bases, and again, any kind of quality of life additions that Blizzard has added over the years. And be sure to check back daily for more great discussions on game design here and on GameWisdom.com, with usually weekly postings of Dissecting Designs. Until next time, I'm Josh Bycer. Have a great night, and I will see you all with the next dissection. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.